Hello and welcome into the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. I'm National Recruiting Analyst Cooper Petagna alongside Director of Scouting, 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins. And Drew, it feels like it's been a while. Last week was a Transfer Portal Palooza show. It was 3 hours nonstop coverage. Just a week later, you and I, the rest of the crew, down there in Fort Lauderdale. Now here we are back in the office. You were in Columbus, Ohio over the weekend, taking in the Elite 11 regionals as we start to kind of slowly make our way towards the Elite 11 finals later this summer. Drew, we also got some action in the transfer portal. We got the transaction wire as well. A lot of things going on in college football recruiting. But first, we got to start off the top. How about Arch Manning over the weekend? 11 of 13, 189 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a lot of social media reaction, depending on who you are. It just seems like the entire recruitment for Arch Manning, the way that it went, no matter what he did, he's always going to find backlash. I think that just kind of comes with the territory of his last name. And the highlight that was continuously showed over the weekend in the spring game was the 75-yard touchdown that he threw against busted coverage. I get it. But you and I went through, 9.5, 10 minutes of all balls thrown. And I have to say, right? Like glass half full, glass half empty. It's a spring game, right? It was pretty encouraging. I like what I saw from Arch Manning.
I think my takeaway on the Arch Manning thing is so many people want him to fail, it seems like, right? It seems like that is the general public, or maybe that's the cool thing to do on social media. So, yes, Cooper, it is a spring game, but I think he passed the test with flying colors. Let me ask you this. You were kind of the champion for us when it came to the Arch Manning recruitment. We have not seen a ton to date. Are you sleeping a little bit better now?
If you want me to be honest, it's a little bit of a relief, right? You trust your evaluation and your conviction. And I saw multiple times live, obviously throughout his time at Newman. And I think the biggest thing is just seeing him at that level. He played 2A ball and played a lower level of competition. Everything when you evaluate Arch Manning, from between the ears to physically 6'4.5", 215 pounds plus, multi-sport athlete, moves well in the pocket. He's a good athlete. He can make every throw on the field. It all adds up. I think the biggest thing is him acclimating to the speed of the collegiate game. And I think you saw him struggle at times last year, but he would have been a senior in high school at the time. So for him to have that year and for us to get a little bit more of an expanded view of the Arch Manning that we've been waiting to see. I love the fact that he's sitting and he's having the opportunity to develop on his own timeline, which is something I think you and I are going to talk about a little bit later in the show. But you don't see it anymore, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, right? And more than likely he's going to sit another year behind Quinn Ewers, but this is where Arch Manning should exactly be in his physical timeline in terms of his development. He seems like he's exactly on track, and you don't get many glimpses at him. So this spring, being able to kind of take in that environment a little bit, and that's as close as he's going to come to live bullets until he has the opportunity to play. I thought it was pretty good. The biggest thing with him that I think is one of his overall biggest positives is his ability to process and play the game quickly. And I thought when you watched him over the weekend, it looked like a quarterback that was in complete command of the offense. That's the biggest thing with Arch Manning. All the rest of it is there. So as he continues to get more comfortable, the better and better he's going to get, just like it would be within a young quarterback. So am I sleeping better at night? Yes. Was I waiting for the spring game to tell me ultimately whether or not, is the Arch Manning experiment going to work out? No. But it was super positive to see. I think you can relate to that on many levels with multiple players that we've evaluated in the past.
Follow-up question. If you had to re-rank the 2023 quarterbacks, we sticking with the same order? And I'll give you the top 5, right? Arch 1, Nico 2, Jackson Arnold 3, Dante Moore 3, Jackson Arnold 4, Malachi Nelson 5, Jaden Rashada 6. I think I would stick with the same order.
Now I'm pretty interested. Who's number 7?
Aiden Childs.
And then you got Avery Johnson somewhere around there, right?
Avery Johnson is 9. Austin Mack is 8.
8, 9, and 10, I'd probably replace with Nelson and Rashada. Still have some hope for Rashada. I don't know, Malachi Nelson, I mean, this just kinda goes into, like, tying in the big picture stuff. I think the character, the football character, aspect of this, especially in the transfer portal era, but especially with quarterbacks, is such a big piece. You could go either way on Arch and Nico right now. I think the biggest thing component to that conversation is there's more of a sample size on Nico, and I think overall, Nico's probably the more talented prospect. At the end of the day, similar to what we've seen, you and I haven't had this conversation yet, but this is what has gone in my head as we approach the NFL draft. The same thing that has happened with JJ McCarthy over the last couple months, where we have seen his stock go from early to middle of the second round now to JJ McCarthy being talked about as a top 5 draft choice. It's going to happen with Arch Manning. You see the way people talk themselves into quarterbacks in the NFL draft, right? Everybody wants to commit themselves because they need one, right? It's like this subconscious game that's going on in your head. It's like, we need that position. Well, let me talk myself into Jaden Daniels. Let me talk myself into Drake May. Let me talk myself into JJ McCarthy. And McCarthy's an easy guy to talk yourself into because of all the intangibles. And he showed enough, and he's been part of a winning program. Arch Manning's going to be like that on steroids, and you think about the name, you think about the pedigree, you think about the way that he's wired. He's going to check every box when he comes out from that standpoint. And guess what? If he's in that conversation, I've always thought this, if he's in that conversation to be a top 5, a top 10 draft choice, somebody's going to get behind the Arch Manning movement and say, all right, well, he's got everything else. This is a guy that I'm willing to take a shot on. So that overall is going to be like the most fascinating thing to play out. And, Nico, shoot, man, I'm so excited to see him this year and get our first full taste of him and what he's like in that Tennessee offense, because I think he's going to light it up. So I feel really good about 1 and 2. I think Dante Moore, we'll see, right, at Oregon. Jackson Arnold, I feel good about overall, just in terms of being a very, very productive collegiate player. And, Nelson and Rashada, it's early, but obviously Nelson trending in the wrong direction, and Rashada going to be on his second school here as well. But, the other thing is, I'm sorry this is long-winded, Drew, but it's like there's cookie crumbs that you can follow in the recruitments that say we should not be surprised about what's happened with Jaden Rashada or Malachi Nelson, right?
Yeah.
So, I think it's almost kind of played out in a very realistic scenario so far.
How about this? 5 of the top 8 ranked quarterbacks in 2023 have already transferred.
It's the name of the game, I guess. It's not a good thing. The numbers have consistently climbed, not just at the quarterback position. Our friend Max Olson at The Athletic, I think he put out a number today, 40+%. The numbers are up, the transfer portal, right? And I'm not even sure if that's just the spring or what that looks like year over year, but it's like a majority of these guys are going to have a hard time finding homes is kind of what it feels like. So anyway, let's get into Elite 11 Ohio. And speaking of quarterbacks and speaking of talented quarterbacks, Taven St Clair, Drew, you texted me, which we like to do when we're at these events. And you're very excited about Taven St Clair, the number 6 player in the country, the number 2 quarterback overall. We have him there, right? We got him at the top of the board, top 1% in the country. I think this was kind of an eye-opening experience for you to get to see him live after you've seen some of the other quarterbacks at the top of the board, and just physically what he looks like. He's pretty different.
Yeah, measurements haven't come out yet for that camp, but body type wise, he looks like a college player. And, Devin Brown was there, Aaron Nolan was there. The regional was outside of Columbus, and 2 Elite 11 former finalists, they showed up. And they were hanging out with Taven St Clair. And if you had to, pick the one that had the best collegiate frame, I think you could make a case it was Tavian. And Coop, he's got the hairstyle kind of like Justin Fields. And I'm not saying he's Justin Fields. That's not my comp for him, but off the hoof. And there's some other people in the Ohio State beat were telling me when Tavian walked out of the tunnel for the spring game 2 weeks ago, they actually thought it was Justin Fields. Like they were confused at first. He was wearing sunglasses, but he's got the same hairstyle. Yeah, he looks physically ready to go. I mean, last number on him, 6'3.5", 211 pounds. I think he was up to 220. He's kind of leaned out a little bit. Yeah, I cannot wait till you see him at the Elite 11 finals. And one of the big reasons why I flew up to Columbus because I wanted to see Taven St Clair. I've seen all these other guys throw in person. I wanted to see him before we get to the summer months when the Elite 11 finals is great. Awesome event. We got 20 elite quarterbacks going on. And I had a hunch I was going to be able to zero in on Taven St Clair. I knew there was going to be some other Power 4 guys there. Had my fingers crossed that maybe Bryce Underwood would show up. That didn't happen, but Taven was the story of the day. And Coop, I wrote it in our top performers I did with Alan True coming out of it. I think Sunday could serve kind of as the launching point towards him working his way to quarterback one. Love the workout. It was probably one of the best I've seen in a while in that type of setting. And they're throwing to stationary targets. They're throwing on the move. I just loved Taven St Clair's footwork, kind of how he moved around. I love the stroke. It's very free. It's very repeatable. It doesn't look like something that's been coached up, and he can let it rip. Elite 11 counselors describe it. He was kind of snapping the football. He's like, you knew when Taven St Clair was up because the ball just sounded different. And I kind of thought the same way. And then you get around him, you talk to some of his coaches that are there. I think between the ears, this kid is wired the right way. Like if I had to bet on kind of a quarterback in terms of like off the field and preparation, I think Taven St Clair is my guy. And, he's at a school that's an hour away from Ohio State. They haven't had a Power 5 or Power 4 signee since I think 1969. I was talking to the coaching staff about it, and Taven is going to be the first one, and he's had options to leave and go somewhere else, but he wants to be there. And I just came away blown away by him in that workout.
I mean, if you're looking for a horse to bet on, right? I mean, the odds of somebody overtaking Bryce Underwood, outside of that, you got David Sanders at number 2. You got Devin Sanchez, the corner out of Texas, at 3, Decory Moore at number 4, Naeem Offert at number 5, and then you got Taven St Clair at number 6. So just from a pure positional value standpoint, Taven St Clair going to be one of the more intriguing names. And 11-3 as a starter last year, completed over 70% of his passing attempts at 37 touchdowns, 6 INTs. Drew, I thought the Justin Fields comparison, just in terms of physical frame, is pretty intriguing. The height weight on Fields is what? Got to be right around there, right? 6'2" and change, 6'3", 215, 220 pounds. Taven St Clair, I have not seen him in person yet, but it was the video that Tom Loy, when he went out to, I believe, Las Vegas, right? They had that combine. And you see him, Underwood's out there, and all these other top quarterbacks are out there. And you see St. Clair, and it's a different type of player just in terms of how he's built, how he's put together, and the way that he can stroke the football. So super excited about him. He earns his invite to the Elite 11 finals. Drew, think about it this way. Got Jeremiah Smith last year, right? 2024, you got St. Clair. Still got some work to do, but in prime position at number 6. We'll have the Elite 11 finals. He'll also have his senior year as well. Has he committed to an all-star game yet?
He is in the All-American Bowl.
There we go, baby, on it early. So he'll have plenty of opportunities for the race for not only quarterback number 1, but more than likely number 1 overall. So we'll see what happens there. But Ohio State, think about it this way. Jeremiah Smith, potentially Taven St Clair. And then in 2026, you're looking pretty good right now with Chris Henry as well, right? So Ohio State putting it together at the top of the board.
Can I just also add this on Taven and that Ohio State fit? It's like this quarterback kind of just fell into their lap, a local kid. And last summer they had a bunch of kids throw and they decided to go all in on Taven St Clair, and he has a huge improvement between his sophomore and junior seasons. I would expect him to take another jump here as a senior. And this kid just loves the Buckeyes. Ryan Day was there at the camp. You have Ryan Day, Joe Moorhead. There was another head coach. I can't remember who was there because they all had sons throwing. And Tavian warmed up with Ryan Day's kid, who's a quarterback in the 2027 class. He spent his entire spring break in Columbus sitting in the film room with all those guys that are there: Devin Brown, Aaron Olin, Julian Sayin. Chip Kelly was, getting him on the whiteboard and whatnot. And I can't remember who pointed out this fact, but Taven St Clair is going to be like the first in-state quarterback signee for the Buckeyes since Joe Burrow. Just kind of falling right in their lap. Like he's the real deal. And, you go to these off-season events, right? I think if you drop Taven St Clair at some of these other camps we've been at, some of these other, 7-on-7 tournaments and whatnot, I mean, it's pretty eye-opening, and it's easy, to see why we're so high on him.
Joe Burrow guy worked out okay. I mean, him and Dwayne Haskins, Ohio State ended up going with Haskins, ends up being a high draft choice, and Joe Burrow, the rest of the history there with the 2019 LSU team. All right, guys, you are locked into the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast every Tuesday and Wednesday at 11 o'clock Central Time, 12 o'clock Eastern. Make sure to like and subscribe on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Andrew and I will get to questions at the end of the show like we do every show. PSA, no show tomorrow. We have the 2026 rankings coming out tomorrow. Big day for Andrew and the rest of the scouting group as well at 24/7 Sports. We'll preview that a little bit later in the broadcast. But Drew, now time to get up to speed on some of the notable commitments over the weekend and the last couple of days as well. And start with Michigan, the defending national champions. They pick one up from top 247 defensive lineman Nathaniel Marshall out of the state of Illinois. Number 73 overall in the top 247, number 11 defensive lineman. Drew, we haven't talked much about this one. You and I really haven't conversed a lot on Nathaniel Marshall either. Just your reaction to a guy that, started out higher on the board. We trended back in the most recent update, but a pretty intriguing body. And then you think about Michigan's lineage of developing defensive linemen. This kind of fits their mold a little bit.
Yeah, well, we always it's always mentioned how we don't talk enough Michigan on this podcast. Up to number 36 in the rankings, right? I think it was their first commitment since early January for the defending national champs. No, I like it. I mean, you said the word right there, development. They can squeeze the most out of these guys. Nathaniel's one of the more high-profile defensive linemen they have picked up a pledge from in a while. And, I think last cycle was only a handful of top 247 recruits. I thought Miami was kind of a team to watch here. We've talked about the Hurricanes and what they've been able to do in Illinois and Chicago. I like to get Cooper. I think Alan True had kind of tipped it off to me that he thought it was going to happen when we were standing there watching all the quarterbacks on Sunday. I don't know. I mean, your thoughts?
I like him. I like the basketball background. I think the biggest thing with him, quick twitch, explosive, shows the ability to go speed to power. I think position versatile defensive lineman. Overall, pretty interesting in terms of where we saw him maybe a couple months ago. Now that he has tested during the spring, I think he tested in 2023. Hopefully we get another opportunity to see him here in 2024. In terms of the long-term early day NFL draft potential, I don't really see that type of guy. But in terms of a guy that can be a potential multi-year starter for Michigan, and I'll say this, like Michigan, every time they take a player, you're kind of forced to do a little bit more homework than you originally intend, because obviously their reputation precedes them in terms of being able to squeeze the most out of these guys. But I mean, in terms of logic, right? This is a player and a good one, a top 100 player within their geographical striking distance. So no issue with this whatsoever. And this is what Michigan should be doing. Drew, another top 247 player coming off the board. How about cornerback Shamari Earls from Virginia? You and I still making our way through the board a lot of bullets flying right now between 25, 26. handful of other things, but the number 115 player in the country, number 11 corner from Virginia, commits to South Carolina. And man, what a dandy this one is. I mean, just from a height, weight, speed profile standpoint, it's got everything that you want from a track and field standpoint. 10.87 in the 100, 6'2 high jump, 23.10 in the long jump, 6'3'6 in the 55 meter. Not to mention he's 6'1 plus, and he's got two-way snaps, right? So this was kind of one diving in on this morning. This is a big get for Shane Beamer.
Oh, dude, I love this pickup. It is a monster addition for the Gamecocks. They only took one corner last year in the 2024 cycle, so they kind of needed to get a dude. In Shamari Earls, sitting number 11 in the cornerback rankings. I think there's a chance he could slide up the board here as more information becomes verified on him. But this just kind of continues a trend you're seeing with South Carolina. They're loading up with really good athletes on on both sides of the ball, but I think more specifically so in the secondary. Shamari Earls, state champ in the long jump. The last state champion South Carolina took in the long jump was Jalen Kilgore, who played as a freshman for them in the secondary. I think this is a monster addition. Shamari checks the boxes off. I mean, he looks on tape like he's over 6'1", and then he's got a lot of two-way production. That shows up as well. The sprint metrics are there. I think this is a huge addition for them, and they've had a really good kind of few weeks on the recruiting front. Brian Rowe, the wide receiver that picked him up, Anthony Addiston, in-state edge rusher with some developmental upside, DeMarcus Leach, under the radar safety with a massive frame. They also land him. So, wondering when Shane Beamer and then we're going to get it going on the recruiting front. Played their spring game over the weekend, big day. I think Shamari Earls is the gem of this class, and he's a big-time ad.
I've not dug into this at all. This is just something I thought of, but it seems like Virginia every year, handful of programs just take turns going in there. And, a couple years ago it was North Carolina. They had a record year in Virginia with what they did. I think it was 2022. And then you think about South Carolina getting involved there, and, Clemson's been involved there in the past. Penn State's been involved there. It just makes me curious. I feel like Virginia Tech would be one of those programs like, all right, if we're trying to take the next step, these are the type of guys that you would love to see stay home. And it's not like, with no disrespect to South Carolina, but, South Carolina's coming off a tough year, right? This seems to be the type of player that if you're Brent Pry, that you'd be going all in on, right? So I don't know. Virginia to me just kind of seems open for business. Like, Tennessee a couple years ago, they go in there and they grab Cam Seldon, right? It just seems to be one of those geographical territories that has a lot of talent that no particular team has planted their flag yet.
Oh, Dabo and the Tigers are this cycle. They got 3 of the state's top 10 ranked prospects committed. South Carolina's got 2. Probably can lead on the crystal ball for Jalen Gilchrist. It's an interesting take there, Cooper.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I was just one of those programs, whether it was Clemson, South Carolina, I mean, you can see both those two are making a concerted effort. I think Austin Alexander from Kentucky, I was thinking I got mixed up there, but North Carolina plucked him last week as well. So, yeah, something to keep an eye on as we go forward. All right, Drew, maybe one of our favorite guys, 4-star edge, Tashawn Willis, commits to Mississippi State, Magnolia State product. Man, just talk about a man-child, 20.5 sacks, two-way player, 6'1", 231. Got to see him earlier in the spring, ran 4.63, 4.21. Got a powerlifting background that I know you love. Just like, when you see this dude, it's like, holy cow, what a man. Like, he is a man-child. Not much made of it. Committed to Mississippi State yesterday morning. I don't think he was reporting his offers either. So it seemed like a prospect that should have a lot more going on. Decides to commit to Mississippi State. And this is a dude like Drew, I think 2 years from now, I think a lot of people are going to be looking up and be like, where did this guy come from?
Yeah, he's kind of one of those ones you see as you log in on Monday morning. comes across your radar, I think, 99% of America is like, all right, I don't know who this is, but hey, we're the 1% that does. If you know, you know. Tyshawn Willis, take out the Sharpie and you can pencil his name in for the freaks list this year. I love this kid. You said it, elite tester, 4.6 in the 40-yard dash, 4.2 in the short shuttle on the lasers, powerlifting background. I think he's got like a 565 back squat, two-way player. And kid was put on our radar. You're right. And I'm like, he's got no offers. What's going on here? I think Mississippi State was telling him not to report them, so people didn't find out about him. This is a big ad for Jeff Lebby in the sense that they're getting a guy that can get home on the edge. 20 sacks as a junior. You also played some offense. That tape's fun. 10 total touchdown catches there. Kind of one of those players where you just want to take them and then figure it out later. And then, Coop, if you think about Mississippi State when they were winning all those games, started up front with the pass rushers. And I think Tyshawn Willis is a get that is not going to be talked about enough. That's a big win for them. He's got some juice on the edge. You can't coach up that twitch. And I'm a big fan. Also second at states in the shot put. I mean, he does it all.
All right, we got some breaking news from our very own Matt Zinitz. You remember Dylan Edwards? Had a heck of a freshman season. From Kansas, was committed to Notre Dame or Kansas State or both?
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
Maybe both, though.
It ends up at Colorado. Well, Drew, he's in the portal. And you think about the year that he had, the former four-star recruit, top 247 running back. Pretty interesting. And I guess we'll just jump right into this one. But, Drew, your reaction to Dylan Edwards, and remember, this is on the heels of Cormani McLean. There's been, I don't want to say a mass exodus, but there's been a handful of players that have left the Colorado program recently as well. Similar to what we were talking about earlier, I haven't had a ton of time to dig in on this specific Colorado situation and maybe what's happening there, who's coming in, who's going out, what was expected, what wasn't expected. This is the one that seems like a big surprise, Drew. Let's just call it what it is. I did not expect this today.
What I'm trying to pull up the stats because, like you noted, I was traveling on Sunday. I've been engulfed in the 2026 rankings. So I'm shooting from the hip here. But I think the past two cycles, so 2023 and 2024, Colorado has signed, I want to say it's about like 31 high schoolers and junior college prospects. And I think Dylan Edwards would be the 10th player that has decided to leave. To me, Cooper, like, what is going on there? Like, that is not a good sign. And I get it. Prime wants to be in the transfer portal and all that stuff, but how are you building a program when it's a continuous revolving door?
And our friend Michael reminded us in the chat, Dallin Hayden did just commit to Colorado, right? One of the best running backs on the market coming over from Ohio State. So you wonder how that kind of plays into it a little bit. I don't know, man. This just seems like, they came out prime time, guns blazing, different way of building a roster. The most ever transfers taken in his first year in college football history. How many players did they take in high school this past year, Drew? 7?
Yeah, one of them's already in the portal. All right,
so
go back to Colorado's 2023 class, right? I mean, I guess Adam Hopkins entered the portal, correct?
Correct.
So that would be 3 of their top 4 high school signees in 2023 when they finished 30th are gone. Is Omarion Miller in the portal yet?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I can't keep track. I can't.
Yeah, we need the portal tracker, but yeah, no, it's interesting. So let's talk about it. Potential fits for Dylan Edwards. Does one immediately come to mind? I know for me, we always talked about, all right, he's from Kansas.
Oh.
Man, the idea of Dylan Edwards and Avery Johnson teaming up, that's got to get you pretty fired up.
Yeah, I love what Kansas State's too deep. I would think that's certainly a place to look. He's kind of a plug and play guy, right? I mean, he's a gadget back that can catch the ball out of the backfield. Like, I think anyone in the country could use him. He's not going to be your every down starter in terms of the sense of like he's getting 25 carries a game. but he can provide some versatility. You think about him. Hey, what about like Florida State's offense? They like to throw the ball to the running backs, get it to them in space. I don't know. Kansas State, that is certainly a fun one. And then think about the core of that offense. You said it. Avery Johnson. They got DJ Giddens, the running back, big pounder. J.C. Brown, true sophomore wide receiver. I think a lot of people are not familiar with that name. They will be after this upcoming season. Yeah, Kansas State, that one excites me.
I think if Damian Martinez ends up at Miami, we're in total like tinfoil hat mode right now. But you're looking at the musical chairs, right? I think Kansas State is an ideal fit, right? I think Notre Dame, Edwards was committed there. I don't know. They got a lot of talent in that backfield. Jeremiah Love is certainly somebody we've seen play running back. He's played a little bit of receiver in the spring. But the team that kind of jumps out to me that's been looking for a back, and they just picked up Henry Parrish, is Ole Miss. And you wonder how many of these backs they would take. But I think Lane Kiffin's one of those guys, like, just give me the toys and we'll figure it out. Dylan Edwards, very specific type of player comparison for me, but it kind of feels like Jerrion Ealy a little bit, if you remember Jerrion Ealy, which was a guy that they utilized a lot of different ways. So, Drew, you and I talked about this on the phone yesterday with Miami and kind of what they're doing, and they're going all in right now. I feel that way with Ole Miss. I feel like it's going to be one of those teams for Dylan Edwards, if not Kansas State. But I would expect, I mean, that's just me, but I'd fully expect Ole Miss to be in the market there for Dylan Edwards.
What about like USC?
Can't count them out either. The funny thing about them is, like, man, they got a plethora of backs.
But that, again, he's not like he's kind of a change of pace in a good way, right?
He's different in the fact that, here's what I like about Edwards. I think you can plug and play instantly, and I think a lot of people are looking at him from the fact of, all right, throw the running back room out the window. Immediately we get value in the return game. He's different there. He is a difference maker there. I thought he was one of the best return men, punt, kickoff that we have seen in the last couple of years. Like that's a specialty for him. And then he's a big play waiting to happen. I think the other thing about him that you like is you can use him a lot of different ways. You can move him around. You can put him on, put him in motion. You can put him on fly sweeps. You can use him as a receiver. There's some eye candy to him as well, right? He can affect the game without getting touches. Like, this guy has more value than what's just perceived. So,
is he +1 win wherever he goes?
So what? Like, you're talking about that much of a difference?
Well, impact. I mean, he returns a kick in a game.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's how you got to look through it. Here's the other thing, right? So now you said musical chairs with these running backs. This feels like NFL free agency. Like, this is it. We are here. These guys are bouncing around. It's so easy for running backs to plug and play anywhere. And how many of these big names have gone on the move? Quinshon Judkins, Henry Parrish going back and forth, Allen Hayden now, Dylan Edwards, Damian Martinez. Like, this is the one position where you can just go wherever you want. Coop, and I think if I was consulting like a high-profile running back, I would tell them to try to play like 3 different schools in 4 years. Like, why would you not want to do that? You think about the money in the NFL side of things, right? Contracts at an all-time low. Now you can just transfer wherever you want. It could be an open bidding season every single year, every offseason. How much are you going to pay me?
There's definitely some financial upside to it for sure. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be recommending that, but I get the notion of what you're saying, right? Just in terms of the lifespan of a running back, in terms of what you should be able to collect and what you should be able to demand at this level right now. It seems like those guys are incredibly valued. So we'll see what happens with Dylan Edwards. We'll keep an eye on what's happening with Colorado. The names, just so you know, if you're joining us, the names that have come up, at least for us, just off the top of our head: Kansas State, Notre Dame, he was formerly committed to at one point during high school. And then Ole Miss. Ole Miss just took Henry Parrish. We'll see what happens there. I mean, Dylan Edwards is going to be one of those guys. Drew, you mentioned USC as well.
Florida State. Can we throw them in there as well?
Florida State. So, Yeah, we'll see. We'll do a little bit more digging. Hey, guys, if you're in the chat, give your best recommendation for where you think Dylan Edwards can land as well. Drew, I don't think it makes much sense to go back to the transaction wire now that we're here. Maybe we can wrap it up at the end because I do want to talk a little Radarius Jackson to Tennessee. But you and I were talking about this, the transfer portal as it is right now. There's two kinds of trains of thought. Like the football character seems to have bubbled up to the surface now more than ever. It is super apparent. We saw some names enter here recently, and you see the names on the lower there: Zach Owens from Clemson, Jay Fair, Adam Hopkins. We talked about Paris Patterson from Arkansas, but the names that you and I were kind of talking about: Vendravius Jacobs from Florida State, Will Norman, former four-star prospect by way of Florida, Marshall enters the portal again this morning. Peyton Kirkland committed to Texas without ever visiting campus. He's in the portal. He's off to Colorado. Cormani McClain, right, who says, I don't want to play for clicks. I guess what I'm saying is you were talking about NFL free agency. I think there are a lot of these guys, man, that don't have the right people in their corner, and they're getting a lot of bad advice. They're not taking accountability. And in Will Norman's situation, I'll just use him as an example that I think you can apply to a lot of players in the portal right now. Will Norman had one good camp at Future 50.
He had a good day at the Under Armour game.
In the Under Armour game. Okay. So let's call it 2 exposure points. We saw enough from a physical standpoint from a guy that only played football for what, like 2 or 3 years at that point? He hadn't been playing long. I went back on his profile. I think his first year playing was either a sophomore or junior year.
Well, Brian Doan continues to bring it up, does a great job for us. I think he was at 6 high schools.
Which, to the point earlier in the show, that type of information is more and more valuable as we start to project these guys down the line. Will Norman is it fair to say, was a developmental prospect? Is that fair to say?
Well, here's the term I was going to use, and he's a coach killer. See the flashes, don't see the baggage. He had a great last year at Florida. He had a really good spring. There was a ton of reports out there about him. But yes, developmental. Yes, it was not all there.
Right. So my point being is when you have a developmental prospect, the biggest thing for them is continuity. They need the same environment to succeed long term. That gives them the best chance of success. These guys, Norman, McClain, Kirkland, pulling the plug early, how does that help? Something's off there. Somewhere in their mind or in their camp, somebody tells them that they're a lot better than they actually are. And you go from Florida, you go to Marshall, and then you hear the same story. And at some point, you're the problem, not the program. You've heard the same thing at multiple stops. So what are you going to do? You're going to keep transferring? I saw the other day, kid went from Oregon to Indiana, now at Michigan State. Anthony Jones says, my last stop. Is it? Because you're on your third program in like 3 years. So what's going to happen when you show up late? You didn't have a spring ball. You show up in the fall, and you're third or fourth on the depth chart. Like this is where we are. And you have coaches being very real with these prospects and their families, telling them, hey, this is the way it's going to go. We don't like that. We're going somewhere else. Good luck to you, man. And these guys are losing the big picture because essentially they don't like what they're being told in the now. And it's crippling. It's crippling a ton of talented kids because, they want their handout and they want the immediate satisfaction and gratification to be rewarded for not doing a damn thing. And it's like, sorry, man, that's not how life works. So you see all these names going to the portal. Oh, what happened? What happened? What happened? And it's like, the guy transferred 4 or 5 different schools in high school. He gets to college. What's different? It's only going to be harder, you know? And player movement, all this stuff, blah, 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 whatever. Um, it's a shame. It's a shame, quite honestly. You see these guys like they can just continue to hop, 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 and it's like that's not the answer. It's not the answer. At some point in your life, you are going to have to face some adversity, and you're going to have to overcome those challenges, and you're going to have to prove your worth. And a multitude of these guys would just rather, go to the next place. And next thing, before you know, you're playing FCS football.
I keep saying it, Coop. I think, and let's say you were on the other side doing your old job. I mean, how important would it be the character ID, getting the right people in the building? I think that is at an all-time high. And with how accelerated the recruiting calendar has gotten, now we're entertaining the idea of a summer signing window. I mean, I've said this in the past. You want to have these kids sign before their senior seasons. Take whatever number we've had of first and second year players in the transfer portal. You can times that by 2 with in this window. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of people cutting bait. A lot of people cutting bait. I think, and I had to speak at some events, to prospects and kids that want to get recruited. Like, my big message is you got to show you love football. And because I think it's only going to pivot more to that on the personnel side, getting the right people in the building.
Do you love football or you love everything that comes with it? Now, here's the thing. People have been saying that for a long time. Coaches have been saying that for a long time. But the thing that comes with it now is money and your name and the headlines and all that type of stuff. I mean, these guys are dealing with more external forces than they've ever dealt with at any point of the game of college football. Like it's here, it's at their doorstep, right? And they continue to get covered and at an earlier age. Somebody said, Yosef said, you guys are partially to blame. You tell them they're special. Nobody tells them they're special. They get ranked. Got a job to do, man. These kids are getting ranked. That's what it is. So,
well, if we didn't rank them, someone else would rank them.
Yeah, I guess, whatever. Anyway, any more thoughts on that just overall? I mean, I guess my last thing to say is, you talk about the football character and how it comes bubbling up to the surface. Like, yeah, now it's going to be more important than ever. And Cormani McClain's 3 schools he's looking at are what? South Florida, Memphis. I don't even know the third.
Is that a new report?
I saw it in the last day or two. But I believe three G5s, guess what? That's reality. That's actually the market. People don't want to deal with. I don't think anybody's out there saying Cormani McClain is not some very talented 6'2" corner that everybody would love to have. But the off-field stuff, guess what? It's not worth it. We've already seen enough. Somebody else can take it. And that's essentially what's happened with a lot of these players. So, yes, Drew, I think you and I, the rest of the scouting team, we're starting to take note of, all right, how many programs have these guys played in high school? How's it going to be any different in college? What does that look like? All these things, who's involved, what's what, it's like every little thing is something. And I think that's kind of where we are. And I think if we're doing the homework there, then you can imagine that process, that research is going to be tenfold for player personnel and collegiate programs around the country.
Here's my other thought on this entire process. And you're going to be like, where did this come from? Some of these kids that are entering the portal, it took like 5 official visits. Then they go in the portal. Then they take 3 more visits. And then they enter the portal then. Like, that's like $20,000 in visits. And what's the return on that, Cooper? Like, when is that bubble going to burst in terms of like, who is footing that bill? Like, how ridiculous is it to entertain like official visit, all this money? I'm going to take an official visit here, official visit there. I pick my school, then I enter the portal, more visits. Like, that bill is adding up, and maybe not at the college football playoff regulars, I think for a lot of other schools, like, what are we doing?
Yeah, not to mention there's no cap on OVs, right? You can take as many as you want. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it is getting to that point. It's getting to the tipping point where I think things are obviously being evaluated, but you wonder how soon action can kind of come down uh, the pipe a little bit. And guess what? You gotta protect the players in a way that maybe they don't know how to protect themselves either. And that's the other thing. So maybe this freedom of movement and go where you want to go whenever you want to go. You know, and if it doesn't work out and you're listed number 2 or 3 on the depth chart when you got there and the problems, I mean, come on, man. Like what are we doing? Um, you and I have said this multiple times, and we can beat this horse dead, but we got to move on. All right. From the portal. Well, hold on. We got a promo real quick, guys. Everything you need, wall to wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, transfer portal updates as well. Our team, I mentioned Matt Zenitz, Chris Hummer, those guys are killing it. Staying locked in. Everything happened on the transfer portal. Make sure to visit 247sports.com. Drew, we got the 2026 top 247 update coming out tomorrow. We're going from 100 to 247. I have laid claim to this. I think this is the hardest update to do, just because you're adding 147 new names. There's a lot of ground to cover, and a lot of these guys we're seeing for the first time as well. Some storylines for tomorrow, like just maybe give us a Spark Notes version, but some things. If there's somebody on here watching this pod and say, all right, like baseline, like one or two things I need to know for 2026?
A new number one. We'll start off with that. We got a new number one. I think that this is a pretty deep and talented edge rusher group. I think that's another storyline to follow. Maybe we're a little bit lacking in 2025, but 2026, there are some creatures out there. We always talk about premium positions. I think that is certainly one to keep an eye on. And then I think it's also very, very talented at running back. I think as it stands right now, we got 8 running backs in the top 100. If you listen to this show or you follow our work, we are trying to be as conservative as we can when it comes to the running back position, just when you look towards the next level and where those guys are selected. But I think it's a deep and fun group of running backs, and specifically so in the Lone Star State. So I think we're going to end up naming 3 5-stars on Wednesday. So tomorrow, 3 5-stars. And I feel really good, Coop. I think kind of 1 through 64. We are prioritizing guys with developmental upside, guys we want to grow with. All in on the guy we got at number 1. And there's a bunch of favorite prospects I have out there. Not an easy update. And I think the other thing to consider, all right, with this class of 2026, first one where COVID kind of impacted it maybe the most, in the sense that a lot of kids are older for the grade. Can't blame anyone for not sending their kid to school or missing a year of high school football, but I've noticed a lot of older birthdays in there. But I don't know. I mean, what's your outlook on it? What do you think?
I mean, I haven't been able to dive into it at the depth as you have. I don't think any of us have. I think the player at the top, once we announce him tomorrow, I mean, I'm super excited about. We talked a little bit about Chris Henry earlier in the show. I just think the year out is what we'll call it. The year in would be 2025. The 2026 would be the year out. It's incredibly difficult at this point because, like you said, a lot of it is projection. A lot of our job is projection. But you're essentially putting a top 247 together, knowing that the majority of these guys that you put in, a lot of it's going to change, right, over the next year and a half before these guys sign. So really what you're trying to do is try to identify guys with staying power and redeeming qualities that you feel like can develop over the next 2 years. So that's the biggest thing for us. We always talk about information is key. And we're very fortunate to Under Armour and Billy Tucker and the job that they do putting on this combine circuit. Quite honestly, if we didn't have that, I don't know where we'd be just in terms of verified measurables and being able to see these guys live and having the combine tape. It's so important for us. And everybody says, well, the tape is the baseline. Just remember, I mean, we're projecting an underdeveloped 15, 16-year-old athlete, right? So how they grow, what that looks like the next 2 years of their physical trajectory and their development is essential. And it's a huge indicator to what one day they'll potentially grow into. So a lot of this is, I wouldn't say flying blind, but you are trying to put a puzzle together with most of not having most of the pieces. And that's kind of where we are. So I mean, it's fun to do that, and you got to take some calculated shots. But I mean, this is you kind of stamp it as like it's in pencil, right? It's not in Sharpie. And that's kind of what this whole update is. So we'll have more on that on the 24/7 Sports recruiting show tomorrow. Drew and I will be on there breaking down everything in 2026. And also, we got 24/7 Sports Live, 5 o'clock Eastern on Thursday. Make sure you tune in there. And if you're on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, make sure to like and subscribe. So we had some breaking news. If you're just joining us late, Dylan Edwards, Colorado's leading rusher, former top 247 running back, has entered the transfer portal. Remember, this is on the heels of Colorado taking a commitment from Dallin Hayden, running back from Ohio State. Drew, we talked about that earlier in the show, some potential destinations, Kansas State, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, USC being a few. And I'm sure there's a couple others out there that are being overlooked. But now it is time for viewer questions. And if you have some and you want to get them in late and you're just joining us, now is the time to do it. Drew, I'm going to take this one for you because we've answered this multiple times. Fletcher, I'm going to just call you Fletcher. Fletcher asks, what's the take on Luke Nickel from Miami 2025 quarterback? What I would say is we've talked about Luke Nickel a lot on here because we got a lot of Miami fans on here. We appreciate you guys. The scouting report is on the 247sports.com profile. Drew, I'll set you up that way. Is there anything you want to add to him other than the fact that we are going to continue to evaluate Luke Nickel throughout his senior season?
Yeah, I think he's going to be at the Elite 11 regional in Atlanta this weekend. Isn't that this Sunday? Am I wrong on that?
That is this Sunday. I will be there. There you go.
Full field reader. I mean, we saw him early on in his junior season down in South Florida. I thought it was, not the best of performances. And then obviously he got better as the season progressed, won a state title there and one of Georgia's highest classifications. I think it's a good take for Miami. And, we're going to have a bunch of quarterback movement in the summer months because we're still seeing and learning about this class right now. I think, where is he, Cooper? He's quarterback 28. There's going to be some guys that move up and down, but we like him. Liked him at Battle Miami back in January, and hopefully he does show up to that Elite 11 because you're going to be there, right? Right, Cooper?
I will be there. I'm flying in and out Atlanta, then to New Orleans, but I'll be excited to see him. We get a lot of questions about Luke Nickel. I know a lot of Miami fans are itching about him, so it would be good to come off the heels of a fresh evaluation, seeing him this Sunday, and I'll be sure next week to give you a report on that. Josh Cahoot, hopefully I said that right. He doesn't even have a question. He just says, you guys do a great job on this show, and if you like recruiting, this is a show. Hell yeah, Josh. We appreciate you, dude. That's what I'm talking about. Sometimes you need a little pat on the back, keep you going. Canes Cats, Heat 305. My man, always in here.
He's a Panthers fan. Big game tonight. Big
is
game.
There you go. Let's go.
Canes Cat.
He says, question to Coop and Drew. Will you guys start ranking quarterbacks lower due to the fact that they are not playing early and the fact they are transferring so often? Drew, I think a good question for you because you often draw the cards of evaluating the quarterbacks. I don't know. I mean,
I think that's a good question. Like, okay, you touched on it in the beginning of the show. Everyone probably in this space is going to watch the NFL draft, right? Like, quarterbacks get pushed up the board when it comes to the NFL, and obviously the rookie deals and all that stuff play into it. So I think if there's quarterbacks we like, we are certainly going to rank them high. And like, okay, Taven St Clair would be a perfect example. It's like, okay, like all the alarms are sounding here. This is a guy we're gonna bank on. Now, if you want to apply it to this 2026 update, right? I think we're only going to have 15 quarterbacks in the top 247, and that would be our year over year average. That's on the lighter side, but I kind of want it to be that way because you don't want to get stuck in terms of like locked to having some of these guys high. I mean, that junior season's important. Obviously, you get the senior season as well. So I think we're always going to rank them high if we truly believe in them. But I think we're trying to be as conservative as ever. And that the Luke Nichols is a question we always get. Like Tramel Jones is a question we always get. And those two have looked great this offseason. Let's see what they how they continue to stack points after points after points in terms of us exposures. I mean, we're trying to get the whole story on these kids. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I think we're definitely more conservative the younger they are. And that's why we make it a priority to see these guys when we can.
Good context on that. Great question, Canes Cats. We'll come back to you. You got another great question. We'll make sure to hit that a little bit later, so hang in there. We got a question from Arian Smith on X, and I like this one. He says, what's your take on 2025 Folsom quarterback Ryder Lyons?
He's 26, right?
2026. I am sorry. But yes, 2026 Ryder Lyons from Folsom in Sacramento. Same school Austin Mack came from. Same school Jake Browning as well. This dude is a player. I like him. I'm a huge fan. You think about the athlete as well. His ability to navigate the pocket, climb the pocket. The comparisons for us is like, I don't want to get you too excited, but it's like he's almost got like a more athletic profile than Jackson Arnold. Similar build, explosive lower half. You see the baseball background a little bit as well. Gets the ball out really quickly. Then you turn on the tape, Drew. I mean, you talk about a guy that processes the game very, very quickly. I love him. I mean, you can apply the gamer tag. Sometimes when you apply the gamer tag, I feel people like they look at it and say, well, he's a gamer, so maybe he doesn't have the physical attributes. That is not the case with this dude. Huge fan of his, and I know you and I have kind of talked about the frame. I mean, he's 6'2", hanging around 200 pounds, but there's a lot of like physical juice in this kid, and huge fan.
I mean, we invited him already to the All-American Bowl. I think he was one of the first in that class. No, you mentioned it. I was trying to pull up my notes, but that's not going to happen in terms of player comp. Like, I wish he was an inch bigger. I mean, he is 6'2", so he's over the key threshold, but you just kind of get around him and you're like, all right. But then you remember his brother plays tight end at USC. Parents were Division I athletes. Gamer tag, sure. He's just kind of lights out, and you saw it last in his sophomore season. Multiple times coming up big in the fourth quarter. Like, he is a winner. 13-2. Threw for just over 3,500 yards. Almost ran for 1,000. Big fan of Ryder Lyons and what he can be. And I think he's one of there's a top group of quarterbacks here in the 2026 class. I think he's right there at the top.
All right, question from Max. Max says, thoughts on Ty Hawkins? Seems like he should get a solid bump after recent camp events. Drew, he's made some noise, huh? I haven't watched him recently, but I know Gabe Brooks has been excited about him.
I keep hearing about Ty Hawkins. I think I'm going to see him Sunday at OT7 Orlando. I believe there's a chance he can be there. I also think he just cleared 47 feet in the triple jump. I like Ty Hawkins. Here's the thing. I mean, I think he's right around 6 foot, but he's got a thick build. And yes, he has looked great at multiple, whether it be Elite 11, I think Under Armour as well, multiple 7-on-7 tournaments. Tom Loy had him as a top performer at Battle New Orleans. I got a chance to see him down at Battle Miami. I mean, I didn't know who he was initially when I was standing behind him and he was throwing, and deep ball is there. And we've talked about it. I think that was my trivia question for you last week, Coop. He's ran for 2,000 yards. That is, I think, top 5 amongst these quarterbacks. He's a dual threat talent. Want to see him improve as a decision maker. He threw 6 interceptions in the final game of his junior season. 6. And I think all 6 were in the first half. I had to go and watch the game just to kind of make sure and just see how that happened. I don't even know how he had 6 possessions in 2 quarters of play. So he's a gunslinger. He's going to throw it into tight coverages. Want to see that interception number drop. Reminds me, Coop, this is my player comp for him. You remember BJ Daniels at USF back when they were back when they were like number 2 in the country.
That's a good comp. Yeah.
That's who I've written down for him. So
Yeah.
we like him. I think he's a guy that's just always going to kind of live on the back end for us.
One of those dudes is going to hit between Haney and Hawkins, right? And when I mean hit, I mean like it's going to be. I think they're ideal fits in what Kendall Briles wants to do.
Oh yeah.
Just in terms of NFL ceiling and that, I don't know. That's a different conversation. But in terms of TCU getting really, really two really good players and good fits for what they want to do offensively, I think Haney and Hawkins are about as good as you can get there. All right, Drew, one of the last ones, Rashada, as we kind of evaluate a potential fit for the former highly touted quarterback from Arizona State. Now in the transfer portal, it seems like there's some growing buzz with Georgia. Georgia, obviously absent of Dylan Raiola. They took Ryan Puglisi. They have Gunnar Stockton there. Obviously Carson Beck for one more year. And I'm missing one. Who am I missing?
I don't think you're missing anyone.
I'm not missing anybody.
Oh, Vandegrift's at Kentucky now.
Yeah, Vandegrift's at Kentucky. And then you got Ryan Montgomery, right? Who's committed in 2025. So Rashada would be that. If I'm Georgia, I mean, I get this. Listen, I think there's things to like about Stockton and Puglisi and Montgomery, but this makes sense for UGA and it makes sense for Rashada to be able to say, all right, get here. Let's get you in over the summer. Let's get you in the fall. Zero pressure situation. Let's get you acclimated with the playbook. And then at that point, at least from a talent standpoint, you would have to think that Jaden Rashada would have the inside track going to battle for that starting job in 2025.
I've only seen Georgia reported. As soon as he entered, I heard from Hummer and Zenitz that watch out for UGA, and I think he set up that visit right away. Is there other schools involved? I really don't know.
I have no idea. I don't know.
I don't know what to make of this. This doesn't feel very Georgia and Kirby. Am I wrong?
I don't know. It doesn't surprise me. I always feel like they've done their due diligence on really talented quarterbacks.
Okay.
I mean, think about Maeva hit the portal. Like they've been looking for this guy that I feel like.
But the guy that had a roller coaster of a recruitment.
I think you'd rather be on this end than the front end.
Okay. And
I guess what I'm saying is all those things that we talked about earlier in the show, I feel like Georgia has a supreme confidence in saying, like, we can be the stabilizing force for a guy like this. And if not here, then where? And if it doesn't work out, they still got some arms that they feel pretty good about. But this is the one, like, it's kind of intriguing enough for us to potentially move, take a shot on.
I think for Georgia, assuming everything's been vetted and, the off the field, everything, it's all wired the right way. I think makes a ton of sense. Number one, because he's kind of your break glass in case of emergency quarterback that has started some games. They don't have that on the roster. What happens if Beck were to go down at some point? We saw how the college football playoff selection committee treated Florida State when Jordan Travis went down. So I think that's certainly notable. And it's kind of fueling that competition, just like you said, for 2025 in terms of who's going to take over for Beck after that. Coop, here is the thing. I've texted a few Florida fans in my life. Play the scenario out for you. Let's say Rashada ends up at Georgia. He's the starting quarterback in 2025. Florida, Georgia, 2025, world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Jaden Rashada lights up the Gators. And let's say Florida gets slapped. There's some type of penalty for what that whole Rashada thing. There's an investigation and all that. What is the temperature of the Florida fan base in the current state of Florida of college football if that were to happen?
I mean, that's a pretty dark scenario for Florida fans.
And ETN is next to him in the backfield. He runs for $150.
I don't know. It's a heck of a hypothetical that you drummed up in 2025.
Which
Well,
is not all that far-fetched.
it's not all that far-fetched, but we'll see. I mean, there's a lot that needs to happen this year. Florida, I don't know how we've gotten it here in this point of the conversation, but like make or break for Billy, right? What is we're off-roading. What does Billy have to do in your mind to keep his job?
Make a bowl.
That's it?
I don't know. But sign me up for DJ Lagway, Jaden Rashada in Jacksonville.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
2025.
All right. Last question here. We'll go back to our guy, Kane's Cats. He says, another question. Do you think it's better for high-end quarterbacks to go to mid-majors or lower-end Power 4 schools so they can play early and develop by sophomore, junior year, they can transfer to a big school? The first guy I thought of that really doesn't fit this, but I'm kind of interested, is like Anthony Calandria at UVA. Like, goes to UVA, plays early, more circumstantial. And you think about that guy, I mean, he's going to play another year at UVA, right? He's going to have a lot of snaps under his belt. That's the type of guy that, you know, if you're UVA, you're going to have to play roster defense on. But similar to Michael Pratt and Tulane, going to be a lot of people like Florida was trying to go find that guy. So it is interesting.
Oh,
Maybe
here's the name that comes to mind on this question: Avery Johnson.
In terms of what? You got to provide some context.
Okay, like number 9 quarterback for us. I can't remember who was involved in his recruitment, but he ends up at Kansas State, and that was a big deal and a massive deal. You know, there's Kansas State fans with his jersey, and he has a chance to be a superstar there. So I don't know. I think path to the playing time. Or here's the thing with quarterbacks: they're going to go wherever they are, where they think they have a chance to start, and once they realize they don't have a chance to start, they're going to leave. So I mean, high-end QBs to mid-majors, is there any other examples of that?
I don't know. I mean, what I would say, a quarterback, find the right fit the first time and stick it out. I mean, we talked about Avery Johnson, Colin Klein. Obviously, he's not there anymore. He's at Texas A&M, but like,
okay, what about Keelan Russell at SMU? I love that.
It's another one. I mean, have some conviction. You know, like, I'll give it a Lagway. He's stuck with Florida. Like, you know, he's going to roll the dice there. I'm trying to think of some other guys, but like, you know, this one's easy to say, but like we talked about Arch in the beginning of the show. Guess what he's doing? He's just developing under Steve Sarkisian. You know, he's not saying, "Oh, I got to go play. I got to go play. I got to go to Georgia. They need a guy. They recruited me. I could go there. They could give me $200,000 more." You know, like, you could pick the right school. You could have some integrity in the process. You could trust the process, and then you could let it play out rather than, you know, continuing to jump. So I don't know. I wish we saw more of that. I wish there was more restraint. I wish there was more trust, especially when it comes to the quarterback position.
I'm doing some quick math. Hold on.
I just got I got a text from a buddy. I'll never understand it. He said, "Y'all love Kansas State so much," with like 6 O's. Do we talk about Kansas State that much?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, shoot, man. I love Avery Johnson. I love Dylan Edwards. I love, you know, I love the idea of that. Cracks me up. All right, Drew, you got anything else?
I'm trying to find an example of a quarterback that stuck it out somewhere.
That it worked out? How about Carson Beck? Just as our boy Jeffrey Bailey in the chat, he says, how about Carson Beck?
That's a good one.
Yeah. Or Michael Pratt.
Yeah, well, if you go back to the 22 cycle, right, all the top 5 quarterbacks are still at their same school, or top 6 or top 7. After that, everyone is transferred.
Yeah, you know, the response to this is going to be, well, what about Caleb Williams? What about Jaden Daniels? What about Bo Nix? You know, the thing is, though, those guys played before they transferred. versus the guys who didn't, so I don't know. Cam Rising, getting active in the chat. Great job, guys. Keep throwing them our way.
Drake May.
Drake May.
Yeah.
Right.
JJ McCarthy.
JJ McCarthy, for sure. All right, buddy. You got anything else? We got an hour 10 here. So we got some work to do.
Hey, Jalen Milroe, and then potentially Miller Moss at USC.
Miller Moss would be that guy. He'd be the catalyst.
And Nussmeier at LSU.
The Nuss bus, for sure. Hey, a little patience can go a long way. All right, Drew, I'm wrapping this thing.
Yeah, I'm out.
All right, guys, we appreciate you watching the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe every Tuesday and Wednesday. No show tomorrow. We got the 2026 Top 247 coming out. Remember, make sure to join the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Show tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll be getting into that heavy. For Andrew Ivins, I'm Cooper Petagna. Great job in the chat, guys. We'll see you next week.